Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah. I have a tarot and oracle card reading for you. It's open, it's collective, it's general. It may or may not be for you. So just watch it if you so choose and use your discernment. Okay, so what resonates, leave the rest, all that. There's some information in the description box if you're completely new to tarot and you're just kind of wanting to get a bit familiar with what it actually is. There's some stuff worth reading that might be helpful. Okay, so this one is there's some depth to this. There's heart and there's mind and there's soul. Heart, mind and soul. Although this message is timeless in that it could apply to things that are happening for you now, things that have happened to you in the past, things that will happen in the future, things that are ongoing. Life has a lot of cycles within it, yeah. I am recording it the day before the new moon in Pisces on Friday, February the 28th in the UK. There is a strong Piscean vibe. Strong Piscean vibe. We'll get to that in a moment. So the thing that I would kind of like to say, because it's part of the message, I pull the cards and I sit and I do meditation with them. I meditate with them and go out for walks and muse about things quite a lot, and the message comes in. And as I was doing it with these cards, and I started to understand what the message was more. I, as a reader, was wondering, oh, well, you know, if that's the message, how come it's not these other cards? I would have expected to see these other cards, these other energies showing up. If this is what this message is. So I was wondering that. And then this morning, just for clarity, so I got it's in the cards that have been dealt, exclamation point, where you wouldn't have anticipated or expected finding it. Okay. It's in the cards that have been dealt. So for me as a reader, quite literally, like the cards in front of me, but that's also an expression, isn't it? The cards that have been dealt is like a figurative phrase, metaphor, isn't it, for situations, things playing out in a certain way, the cards that have been dealt, yeah. Which could apply to a myriad, could just an infinite number of things. So, discernment. So yeah, where you wouldn't have anticipated or expected finding it. So something has been found, will be found, is being found, however it applies, when it really wasn't expected that it would be, or that it would be in a particular set of circumstances or a particular situation, a particular energy. Just, but it's there. It's in that where it wasn't expected to be. So the first card I got out from the tarot was the Ten of Cups, and the oracle card that came out with that was the Moon. Okay, so this is a card of Pisces. The astrological association with this is actually Mars in Pisces. Oracle decks are different from the tarot, right? So in the tarot, the Moon card of the major arcana is the card of Pisces, but it's this Moon oracle card. So the author of the deck predominantly, she sort of talks about cycles with this particular card. And yes, because this Ten of Cups is a 10, it's a completion point, so it is signifying a cycle that is coming to an end. The end of it is in sight, right? So the cycles thing is applicable. But the first thing that came through with this was, it will come. It will come. And I think that is because in my previous reading, the final card that came out was the Three of Cups, and it came out with this Moon card. And they finished the reading, right? The message with that Three of Cups in that previous reading was, there was this big emphasis on like the third thing. The third thing, the third of something being like, it was significant, there was some importance, it was really being stressed about like three, the third thing. And I've not had time to have a look back at the reading to see, but I think it was something like the arrival of the third thing breaks the fairy tale's enchantment. The arrival of the third thing breaks the fairy tale's enchantment. And then this card, the first thing it said to me was like, it will come. It will come. The third thing will come. Okay? The third thing will come. And I've put here, realization or recognition. Realization or recognition, acknowledgement of the third thing is the completion of a cycle of seeking. Trust that three, trust that there will be a victory, that what's been recognized will be realized. Okay, because this looks to me visually like a trophy. That's just kind of what I get with this card. It looks visually like a trophy, and it with a light bulb, right? So it's like this point of realization and acknowledgement. It's got a kind of a bit of an energy of reward in it, like the reward for something. And because it's coming through this idea of seeking, like something that has been sought out, has been found. It's like this is that point. That cycle of seeking is complete. It's like when the third thing, whatever that means for people, yeah. The third thing that will come, the third thing will come. And at that point, so it might not have happened yet, right? At that point, There'll be this kind of realization, light bulb going on. There'll be a recognition, an acknowledgement, which is this idea of like a trophy, you know, is to acknowledge an achievement. To acknowledge an achievement. But I've put in capital letters down here, acceptance. Acceptance of the third thing is the completion of a cycle of seeking. So to realize it, to recognize it, to acknowledge it, but accept it as well. And I've also put a coming together of two, because it looks like two figures. Well, it is two figures in the imagery. A coming together of two makes the three. Trust that three, right? So it's the idea of like two people or two things, two components coming together, and it creates a third thing, doesn't it? It already has created a third thing with just one person's energy, another person's energy. Their energies together is like a third energy, that kind of thing. Trust that three. Trust what it is when it's together. Trust that three. The third thing will come. So maybe it's talking about acceptance, because it's like it might be something that's already in the awareness. It's already kind of on the radar. It's on the radar. But the cycle of seeking only completes if it's accepted that something's been found. Right? That's why there's such an emphasis on acceptance. It only completes the cycle if we accept that we've found what we've been looking for, right? Yeah, okay. So that with the Ten of Cups. But so this moon was where the context started to come in, right? Because there are some interesting things with this idea of something that's been sought out and having like this big emphasis on like accepting it, recognizing it and realizing it, okay? What was I going to say then? Right, it was this. The moon energy typically talks about cycles, this one in particular, but lunar energy, moon energy in the tarot and quite generally with symbolism, right? It can, in symbolism, it is a huge symbol of like the unknown, the unseen, mystery, kind of, you know, that kind of thing. The moon is very, very symbolic of that. Right, so with this, okay, so I was getting with it, right, so I'm just I've written things down. I think I'm a little bit this card brought a lot of it brought certain things to mind for me, that let me know kind of very much what sort of energy it is communicating here, what the message is, what it's saying. And I'm considering how to articulate it. Right, so it's this thing about the accepting that something has been found. I remember what I was saying at the beginning as well about it being in the cards that have been dealt where you might not expect to find it. It's like something I think quite emotionally fulfilling, or has that potential to be so, looking for some kind of emotional fulfillment. But maybe not, there being some, either not, okay, I'm just going to pause it and have a think about how to articulate it. So I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so this energy, right, it was bringing in words like descent, disorienting. It's like it's an energy that is hard to see through, which I think is why there's this emphasis on the light here. It's literally like a kind of light in a period of darkness or a space of darkness. So a light that is perhaps readily recognized, but there might be some kind of struggle to accept it because it's been found where it wouldn't be expected to be found. It's going back to that I said at the beginning. It's in the cards that have been dealt where you wouldn't have anticipated or expected to find it. So there's something about that. Because the moon, right, the moon talks symbolically a lot about psychic space, emotional space, mental health, right? As a reader, I very much associate the moon with sort of mental and emotional struggles, right? Things that can be very difficult to navigate and to move through. It can be hard. There can be like a heaviness to it. There can be a heaviness to this energy, right? Not always, but it does have that. So it does talk, the moon does talk very much about psychic space, about our subconscious, about, it's often depicted as like a vast ocean, yeah, imagery in sort of tarot cards. Vast oceans to illustrate the vastness of our consciousness and everything that kind of goes on in there. The depths of the ocean, you know, you think about all the stuff that we don't know about, the very sort of depths of the ocean. It's fucking amazing analogy or metaphor, is it? For our consciousness as a whole, yeah. But this here was really coming through with that difficult to navigate, heavy, psychic, mental space that has this emotion, this emotional element to it as well. But the definition of the word psychic, you go to the root of it, and psychic, it relates to the soul. So this is where the idea of the soul comes in. And the soul has sought something out and found it. The soul has sought something out and found it. And right, so it's actually really beautiful, because I was getting this this idea of, you know, those like freaky ass like UV creatures that live in the depths of the ocean, and they look wild, man, don't they? Just like alien creatures living in the depths of the ocean. And they look incredible, but they glow, and you can just see them so clearly. And I don't know what its name was, its scientific name, but just remember it was this kind of fish, this big, like quite round fish that had like a sort of antenna that went up like from his back and came round, and it was like a little lantern in front of him. And it's just, so he'd be swimming around in this kind of really deep darkness. He had this little kind of UV lantern attached to his body. He was evolved to move around in that space, right, and be able to see where it was going. And I got that. It's like, that's your soul. That's your soul. Basically, this is kind of indicating a state of mental and emotional difficulty. Something that is difficult to navigate, it is difficult to move through, and it likely has a heaviness to it. It probably has a kind of cyclical nature to it as well. It's not that this is a state that one is in all of the time, but it comes round, it comes round, it goes, cyclical. I got the word, well, okay. So the word dysphoria, okay, the word dysphoria, which is, it's a really strong, quite overbearing sense of unease and unhappiness, right? Dysphoria. And the root of that word, well, the word comes from Greek, and its Greek translation is hard to bear. It's an energy that is hard to bear, basically. Or there are certainly points in it that are particularly so. And relating to the psychic, emotional, mental space, right? That's why it said about mental health. So the thing about the fish and the idea of soul is that moving through this kind of energy, it can feel very flat, yeah? It can feel very flat, and it can feel very heavy. And you ain't necessarily particularly pepped up and switched on to things that are going on. things can be like, it's like that can kind of be clogged, right? Can be clogged when you're going through this kind of heaviness. So the fish, even if a person's mind and emotional state is dysphoric and heavy and flat, it was basically saying the soul always knows where to go. The soul can always see. The soul can always see. The soul is always leading and guiding. So what the soul, and your soul will always know, always know the thing, man. Your soul will always know. The soul was never going to steer off course. The soul was always going to be guiding you to the thing, right? The soul was always going to be doing that. Even if the conscious mind was in a different state, even if the emotional state was dysphoric, was other, right? The soul always knew, and so the soul has found what it's been looking for. But that's why it was wanting to emphasize the accepting. Am I repeating myself? It's like it's unexpected. It's unexpected. The next card that came out was Temperance. So if the moon kind of represents this idea of depth, heavy, in the metaphorical ocean, right? In that space. This was kind of like the coming up for air, like coming back up to the surface. But this is like coming back up to the surface and needing a fucking moment. This is needing a fucking moment. This is like a card of like processing, integrating, like transmuting. It's in a lot of other decks, it's actually depicted as an angel with 2 cups. This is definitely like a being from a higher realm. Is this? It's you. It's an aspect of the one who's been moving through this space. Higher self, a guide. I want to say it's an aspect of self though, with that whole like fucking needing a moment to process. Needing a moment. It's got a bit of a sense of like not like a gasp of air, but you know, if you've been underwater for a while, you come up and you get air and you kind of like a big breath. It's got that kind of fresh breath of fresh air. Breath of fresh air. The soul has been seeking out a breath of fresh air, and the soul has found the breath of fresh air. So there's needing to take a fucking minute. It's like it's a lot to do. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. Because this is like higher. If you imagine like just vast consciousness, and it's got depths and it's got heights, yeah? That's kind of, it's like the depths and the heights. And there's just this thing about integration, like taking the depths and sort of joining with the highs. It's like, there was like an emphasis of height and depth, but this is a very peaceful energy. This is a peaceful space. So I didn't want to say like a gasp for air, because that doesn't sound too peaceful. This is like needing a moment, needing to process, needing to kind of, there's also, it was coming through with this idea of like a kind of a desire to look closely, a desire to examine, a desire to have a look at, to open something up, to be able to understand it, to have a better look at it. So I think this is like a stage of acceptance. It's like, okay, this has been seen, understood through feeling perhaps, rather than through conscious process or rationality or the intellect. It's kind of saying, I think emotion will be how this is understood. There's this kind of feeling of lightness. I was emphasizing the heaviness so much here. There's this feeling of lightness. And so there's this curiosity. Look how light this card is. It's like being in the light, being in the peace of that. But there, I mean, as I keep saying, like there's a need to process. There's a need to give oneself the time to sit with it. But also like there's this really quite sort of pure and lovely curiosity to kind of have a look at it, want to have more of a look at what's going on, wanting to understand. And in trying to do that, it kind of integrates, we start to integrate stuff anyway, don't we? If we're sort of actively trying to look at something and understand it, we're taking it in, and we're doing that through that process anyway. Yeah, needing to process because something was regarded as not likely to happen. So there might be a bit of an element of surprise. Maybe that's why I was wanting to say the gasp for air. Like an element of surprise to it, perhaps. Right? A moment's point. It might be quite a big moment. It might be something that takes, it might take a while. But because I was kind of wondering a bit about like advice in this spread, I would say that this is definitely a card of advice. It's like, do take that time to just sit in peace, especially, you know, after moving through periods like of this kind of thing. Definitely take that time. Definitely try and understand it. Like, that is advisable. Yeah, unified with an aspect of the soul. Deep and significant. Yeah, so I've written, so perhaps folks don't know the soul has been seeking a particular thing. right? Which we really do not always actually, but often, the majority of, I don't know. It's that the soul, maybe this is also a point of kind of understanding. That might be why it's an extended moment, and there's all this idea of like higher powers, higher self, and this need to kind of connect, right? Connect, pull up, connect that, pull that down to connect. It's maybe like maybe quite a seminal moment of understanding that the soul can find exactly what it is that's needed, the highest thing, the highest, right? It can raise up, it can raise up, it can raise up, it can understand. Yeah, elevated because they found what it was they were looking for, whether they knew they were looking for it or not. There's this, it's all this surprise, it's that, yeah, finding something that you didn't know you were looking for in a place that you didn't expect to find anything. But it's like finding the thing. It's finding a very, like, very significant thing in a particularly challenging period. But excuse me a second. Temperance came out with Techno Cleanse here, which this is interesting, right? Because I nearly always can relate, always can just relate to the message that the creator of the deck intended with this card about stepping away from fucking screens and technology and just kind of having a bit of a detox, cleansing yourself down. That actually really is really always pertinent, because yeah, it's good to be mindful of what we receive through a screen. I think I said that in my last reading as well, because this card didn't come out, but it was amidst. But that is kind of here, because as well, especially I find this psychic energy, this psychic emotional space, it can be very porous. And there can be a need to be mindful and measured about what is let into that, right? Mindful of that. So yeah, that. But the Techno Cleanse was, it was actually kind of really talking about like electricity and the Uranus, the planet Uranus, which rules electricity. Uranus is called the Great Awakener. So I think some of that is maybe what I've been discussing. That this kind of need to integrate, and the higher and the lower and the sort of needing a fucking minute, that's got an awakening kind of vibe to it. Yeah, it's like being able to see and understand something on this like deep soul level. It just feels like there's a lot maybe there. So it was coming through with this, yeah, electricity, technology, it's really interesting. So because of all the wires, and because the figure is kind of doing things with his hands here, it was this idea of like untangling wires, like straightening wires, crossed wires and straightening them, you know. I've written like electrical signals in the mind being kind of disrupted or there's something about how the kind of structure in which they're moving around. So this is really important. Words, man. It's this idea of like rerouting, incorporating this information that the soul has sent through the emotions. The soul has found something throughout a period of heaviness. It's found something important. There's this integration, this kind of recommendation, this need to understand, and it's got this energy of like waking up, like in the sense of an expansion of understanding, like an awakening of what's possible, You're never in like systems update. And then right, all this about the incorporating and electrical signals. Okay. So my experience with this kind of energy, I had a very, very difficult time in 2023. It was a very intense year for me, mentally and emotionally. It was a very challenging time, and it was a very intense period of having to sort of regularly move through and operate in and from just really dysphoric, that's why I keep using this word, dysphoric, mental and emotional states, right? And I would move through it, and then I would come out of it, and I would move through it, and I would come out of it again. And it was incredibly disorienting, because it would be one extreme and then kind of back to feeling all right, and then extreme. It just had this, I used to, in my journals, I used to often use the word like plunge, descent, just kind of just wallop, I think was a word. I used to just feel like I'd got walloped, been walloped into this like heavy, like thick, like energy. It was very, very hard. It was a very difficult period for my mental health. Okay. And I remember as I started towards the end of that year, and I actually started coming into the awareness and the understanding of what was actually going on, of what was happening, what I was experiencing. As soon as I started to understand that and have that information, I had a dream. I'm a big dreamer. I have a lot of dreams. A lot of that. We're talking about that a lot. Already have. Comes up in readings a lot. But I had this very, very significant dream. And it was, I was in the dream, I was in a lift. I was in a lift, like an elevator, and it was just free falling really fucking fast down a shaft. It was just free falling. It was going really, really, really quickly, really fast. Just, and I was in it. I was the only person in that lift, and I experienced it. I really had the sensation when I was asleep. It was crazy. Where there was this incredibly fast downward motion of the lift, but in the dream, like, I started to really delicately float. I started to float, so my feet came off the bottom of the lift and I floated to the top, and my head was touching the top of the lift, and it was really gentle, and I was sort of smiling softly. I was finding it really it was quite amusing, but it was just all very gentle. But this lift was fucking going. The lift was still going down real fast, you know, but it was just me. It was kind of, and when I got to the bottom, I got out and there was like a kind of basement space, and then there was somebody there and they kind of greeted me, and that was the thing. But when I woke up, I got the words, the physics are changing. The physics are changing. And not literally from that point forward, but after that, gradually over time, it wasn't that I stopped moving through this energy, right? Me and this energy have become friends. But that I was describing about that kind of descent that I found really disorienting, because I just felt like I was being flung, just felt like I was being fucking dunked into deep water, you know, just that. And it felt very abrupt and it was very disorienting, because I couldn't, it's like I couldn't kind of center myself. I couldn't sort of find where I was at, because it was just extreme. It was really extreme. And so after that dream, the physics are changing. That abruptness, me experiencing it as some kind of sudden descent or a kind of plunge into this other state, that started to balance out. It started to balance out. So my experience of it was smoother, right? We've got the Six of Swords coming next. It wasn't that I didn't move through it anymore. I still do. I still do. But it's a smoother transition than it used to be. It's a smoother transition than it used to be, okay? So it's the idea of like the physics are changing. It's like, and the idea of rerouting and a systems update. So these next two cards, Six of Swords and Thrombosis. Again, this wasn't really anything about thrombosis, which in the context of the card, it sort of means clotting, right? Clotting. You know, things kind of gathering in the mind and in the emotional state that you need to kind of clear. But that wasn't really what was coming through. It was the smoothness here. This came through as like relief, right? Moving into a smoother, more peaceful experience of motion, like I've just been describing with the lift. A more peaceful experience of motion. So it's like it's being integrated, and then you can move forward from that point in a smoother way. It's like the water's still there. So like I was saying, it's not that this energy won't have to be moved through anymore. Something about the experience of it is becoming smoother. And what this card was talking to me about with all the wire, you see, it was talking about neuroplasticity because of the structure, like the order and the structure. And like I was saying, like the wire, this process of integration, this kind of considering and looking, and it untangles Uranus with the electrical kind of signals in our mind. It was talking about like new networks and connections through which electrical signals can pulse and weave, right? Like neuroplasticity is like the how your brain is capable of forming like new connections, right? The swords of the metal, there's this idea of conducting electricity, and this kind of structure, this ordered structure is like a new networks. But this card was also, it was a bit like, it had a double role, because it was signifying like, it's like that depth and that heaviness, right, where you can, you can just feel like this. You can just feel, it can be your experience of it, right? So it was talking about moving away from that, being able to kind of move past, move out of a particular cycle of it. So it was talking about that, but it's also saying there's also this new structure in place. There's this new structure in place. It's been integrated, and it's had this effect of like rewiring, rerouting. So the electrical signals can work around, can move around in a different way. It's beneficial. It's beneficial. It benefits the experience, right? Be beneficial. Right, so then this next two cards, this was fascinating, right? Oh, this, right, so the next, it was the Queen of Swords with the True Will. The last reading that I did, I had the Magician out and the Magic card out, and I was really fucking curious about why the True Will card wasn't out in that reading. And then the True Will card has come out here. Okay. So much information. That other reading was putting a big emphasis on, or really the message in large part was, if you're trying to do things that are very important to you, it really was, there was a lot of emphasis on like, you need to rest. There was a really, there was a need to rest, and in a state of rest, there would be this vision of happiness. There would be this vision of happiness in a state of rest. Because sometimes the best thing to do is to stay in bed. Anyway, something about a state of rest was important. I think to access the true will, in some way it was to, there would be some vision of happiness. Okay, that's all I can remember from that reading. You have to go watch it. It was called The Star Meets the Tower, I think. There was something about a vision of happiness in a state of rest. So there was this encouragement to get the rest needed to kind of not be running yourself ragged or burning yourself out or just doing too much, trying to achieve something. It was like make sure that you rest. That is actually going to serve in a much more powerful, greater way than trying to do loads and going out and being really busy and doing loads of stuff. It was sort of saying do less and put more into rest, and something will kind of come together. Anyway. Right, so the Queen of Swords, man. So heart and mind, she's the heart and mind. So swords are air, swords are the air element, okay? And the queens are also water. So air is mind, heart is water. So heart and water, she knows her shit, man. Does this one, she knows her shit. She's not overly directed by the mind, and she's not overly directed by the heart. There is balance. There is a balance between the two here with the Queen of Swords. It's like balance, fairness. She don't fuck about. She doesn't. But it's like she's acquainted with her fears, and she's highly capable of moving through fear, sorrow, grief, and like she knows that. That is what this archetype with Queen of Swords is renowned for, is her ability to still show heart. You know, she's been through challenges more so than the other queens in the deck. You know, it's kind of what she's about. They don't define her, but she knows how to move through them, yeah. I've written heaviness in capital letters again. What else have I written here? Yeah, there was something about, because she's got all this grey in the cards. And there was this grey in the Ten of Cups at the beginning. So there was this idea of like, is this what the soul has been seeking out and found? So something with the grey there, like wisdom. It's a neutral colour as well, so there's an idea of like bringing calmness, like neutralising, right? So it's not, so there's not the kind of unpleasant extremity. Is she what the soul has sought out and found? 3 question marks. 3 question marks though. 3 question. Right, and then I've written she's magic. Magic sword, writing on the air, messages in the mind. Writing on the air, messages in the mind. And there's a bit of violet. She's got violet in her star here. So violet in Hermeticism, the colour violet is associated with the moon. So the Queen of Swords is feminine energy. Lunar, like the moon is lunar energy, it's feminine. This doesn't have to be a woman, by the way. We all have masculine and feminine energies. So there was something, so yeah, the hermetic, so it's associated with the moon. So like alchemy, astrology. Alchemy, astrology, and the occult. Right, this is an alchemical energy. It's that like transfiguration, transmuting, incorporating, right? You kind of adding something, creating something, mixing it in. So there's something about the violet there. Alchemy, astrology, the occult. Hermeticism, by the way, is just a kind of school of philosophy and sort of learnings based, well, Hermes Trismegistus, he's kind of a mixture of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Okay, there's a lot of like writing, wisdom, magic, and the moon, right? All things that this one's known for as well, actually, because writing is a form of communication. She's got wisdom, like I've just said, with the grey. Just been talking about a magic sword. She's got the violet on the 6-pointed star that she's kind of drawing in the air. And she's feminine energy, so she's lunar. She's also pointing to me as I look on the table. She's pointing her sword to the east, which is the cardinal direction of air. And that's interesting because to the east of her is this emperor. Get to him in a minute. Let's go back to true will. Right, true will. I've just, with this one, I wrote Empress of the Winter. Empress of the Winter. In the tarot, the Empress is number fucking 3. The Empress is number 3. And yet I got Empress of the Winter because, again, she's all about nature, is the Empress. Yeah, she's Venusian energy, heart. And often she's depicted in nature, the big trees. So I was like, oh, winter, Empress of the Winter. It's like finding warmth and love. Warmth and love. Warmth, love and light when it wasn't expected. It's like it's not the season for it. It's not the season for it. But the soul knew, right? The soul knew. The true will's involved, so it's got you there. It's got you there. Heart's coming through now. Right, this is important as well. It's what I was just saying about my previous reading and like rest and vision of happiness to kind of get to the true will to sort of manifest. I've written here, it's been really hard to activate the true will because of movement through a particularly challenging mental and emotional space. But now those very same challenges are what power the true will. So that's interesting. The strong desire to want something activates the true will, and so does navigating and negotiating difficulty. Because I suppose there's an element of desire to get to the other side of that, right? To get to the other side, or to take one step. You know, sometimes it's just about taking the next step, isn't it? Doing a small thing. a very small thing, but you know, so to just keep going. Put cuts the teeth in a very profound way. Yeah, it's actually like this idea of honing and precision, creating direction with the true will. What she writes on the air, the messages in her mind are of the true will. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to kind of say here with this, it was really, it can be, it just can be difficult, right? Still. When, like I was describing, when I was having that difficult time, particularly difficult time a couple of years ago, and it felt like I would just get knocked. It was very disruptive in its way, or it's certainly, that was my experience of it, right? It felt very disruptive to things that I was trying to do, things that I was trying to get done, because I would just wake up one day and just not want to do them. It would just be this completely other thing. So when you you know, and then I would just kind of be having to sort of move through that and kind of wait till I was on the other side of that, and then I would kind of be able to kind of get back to doing things again. Yeah, so just but it was, I used to get really frustrated and really upset because I thought, you know, how the fuck am I supposed to get things done in any kind of real significant way when I just felt like I was being like knocked off course all the time, and it would be exhausting. I mean, it was just fucking exhausting, you know, and then just sort of get myself back on track. And I started to worry and get upset, like, am I ever gonna sort of make any progress? Am I gonna be able to do X, Y, and Z? And I got really worried about it. So that is really, I think, what it's getting me to talk about here, because it's making that point of the strong desire to want something activates the true will, and so does navigating and negotiating difficulty. That negotiating and navigating difficulty cuts the teeth in a very profound way. If mental and emotional challenges have taken one off course, or there's been a perception they've taken off course, they've actually served to hone. And I've written precision in like italicized. Creating direction with a true will. What she writes on the air, the messages in her mind are of the true will. It's like the difficulty. It's like it's a skill set, right? It's a skill set that you acquire because you have to learn how to function and to kind of move through it, right? You have to do that. You have to learn how to take care of yourself and what you're going to do. And like, you learn it and it serves you. So if there's like a perception of if these things, these challenging periods maybe sort of taken off course, I'm not saying that they don't. But it's that again, isn't it? Finding something where you don't expect to find it. It's like they serve a purpose. It's like it serves you in a way that might not be realized when you're actually in it. It's like you realise it a bit further down the line, or you watch some weird tarot reader on YouTube chatting about it. Oh, right, I've only got these last two cards. So we've got the Emperor, which is masculine energy, but again, it can be a man or a woman. Masculine energy, right? So if the feminine is like receptive energy, yeah, feminine. The masculine is kind of the active principle to the feminine receptive principle, yeah. Generally speaking. Okay. So there's that. And right, Winter Empress, I was just saying here with the 3, the Empress being the 3, Emperor is the number 4. Empress and Emperor. Venus and Mars. Actually here, right, so with him, because of all the red and orange, it was Mars and Jupiter. So Mars is associated with red, Jupiter is associated with orange. So there was something there about action and expansion, because Mars action and Jupiter is like an expansive, very like beneficial energy is Jupiter. Jolly old uncle is how I sort of tend to think of him, but I mean, he can expand fucking anything really, but it's so Jupiter could expand energies like this, but Jupiter can also expand energies like this, okay, and this. Is associated with the sign of Aries, which is the astrological new year, so it's like springtime. But oh, so it was interesting, so he's got the pale violet as well. He's got the pale violet on the edge of his cube, and she's got the pale violet on her 6-pointed star 3D construction thing. What are they called? Platonic solids? Don't know if that's quite a platonic solid, you got me. Right, anyway. They've both got the violet. They've both got the violet in what they're building. And he's looking in the direction of the Queen as he builds. There's something of the Queen, or there's something that the Queen has also, like a quality or an element that is shared between them, or it's common. It's like a common denominator. Is that what I mean? Common denominator. It's like it's a shared thing, and he's got it in the foundation of what he's building here. Yeah, the lunar element. The lunar element. So there's that idea of the violet, the moon, the hermetic, the astrology, the alchemy, the lunar. But I think because of everything I've been talking about with the lunar here, that's definitely part of it, because that's been so significant, what I've been discussing here. So there's something about the lunar. I've also written something about the moon in summer with this one. The moon, well, I've just written the moon in summer, question mark. So there might be a particular lunation in the summer that's significant. Might be an Aries moon, or a Libra. Or the moon just might look really amazing this summer. There might be something particular with the moon. I can't remember what year it was, because it was quite a long time ago. The only time I think I've ever lived in a house share that had like a proper garden, because the mate that I lived with actually on that, he had a really nice garden, and it was And I just used to sit, I only lived there for 6 months, but I just used to sit in the garden on a night and have a joint. And so I'd sit and just look, and I just remember the moon. I just used to moon gaze, but it was massive. And it was all these incredible colours. It was just this real like spectacle. And I always forget about looking at like what year it was and what was going on with the moon, because it really was like fucking phenomenal in a way that I don't think at the time I appreciated. But I did, because I used to sit and stare at it a lot. Hi. Okay, so an emperor energy. Using intelligence to create order and structure of his surroundings. Talks about like mature coordination of foresight, planning, and a kind of bold, it says bold fearlessness in the book, but I think just, like boldness. Talks about like defining limits and showing confidence in one's abilities. Structure from chaos. Structure from chaos. It's talking here about the forming of a new structure, the electrical signals in the brain, and it will be beneficial for moving through particular mental and emotional spaces and states, right? Structure from chaos. It's like where something's been done with it, or the self-awareness. The self-awareness is there with it. The self-awareness is there. And surroundings could talk about like mental surroundings, right? So it's being able to, might be talking about like mental planes, mental spaces, which would of course translate into environment and work that's being done, like activity that's being done, right? Control and coordination. Yeah, control and coordination, skillful execution if something's been done. Confidence. Can be the energy of like a leader as well, can this? Like protection. Virility as well, which is a distinctly male thing. Virility. Oh, but it's interesting because he came out with cleanse. And this was where like the idea of fecundity came in, right? So this actually, with this, I just got about beavers and how beavers build dams to control the flow of water. Symbolic water, right? I'm rushing now because it's a long video, so I'm just going to breathe and not rush through the last bit. Okay. Beavers build dams, don't they, to control the flow of water. And when they do that, they create new environments and habitats where they can live, but also where other species, other animals and plants, they all thrive there as well, because the beaver has done what is perfectly natural process for it. Expert architecture. Beavers are expert architects. Like, they fucking know what they're doing, don't they? They know exactly what to do. They're incredible. They work really hard. Little emperors of the waterways, aren't they? They work really hard, but they really know what they're doing, and their structures, they're really built to last, aren't they? And then they kind of give way when they need to, and the water will flow again, and then they can rebuild. There's this big idea of like natural process. Yeah, something about all the water in this card. the moon, the idea of water, the moon symbolism, and this violet here again. The growth that's happened, right? Because there's water in this card. There's like water, and there's all this fecund growth. So it's talking, and like the beavers building the new habitats. It's like the growth that's happened within. It's like there's always growth happening, whether it's perceived or not, there's always growth, right? So even when things feel heavy and we're quite switched off, or we're just sort of weighed down, flat, despondent, it's like there's still growth. There's still growth. Because the soul will always be doing its thing. Soul will always be doing its thing. So there'll always be growth. So the fecundity of material to use. And then I've written in capital letters, the wealth of natural resource that has been gathered through hard emotional cycles. There is a fecundity, a wealth of natural resource, and wealth in the respect of like of people, of like innate qualities and abilities that are your wealth. Okay, it's like it says in the book for this, it says if you had nothing but yourself, who would you be and how would you shine? Right? If you didn't have anybody else, nothing. It's like your wealth. What is it that you have? And there's all this like deep. It's what the whole reading and what I'm being quite long in pointing out to you, I think, is it's just this incredible wealth. Right? Because there's just all this skill and there's all this knowledge. There's all this skill. There's all this knowledge that you can build with it. You can incorporate it. It will be supportive for what you're doing. But it's like this big soul, the soul, heart, mind, soul. So this is like virility with the Emperor and the fecundity here, which is all this natural thing. So it's that idea of Empress again, right? Comes after, it's like the true will, the bear tree, and then there's this here with the greenery. Something's coming. Because even if it's like the soul has thought out an aspect of yourself, happy days, right? So there'll be like a unification between aspects of within yourself. It's happy days. But I feel like it's not an either or. It's like it's within self and it will show outside of self as well, right? So I think that's how we get shown. It's why we have to know we have to recognize the reward and accept it. It's that when the universe shows it, when the universe will show it outwardly, there's a need to accept when you're being shown something. Okay. Really long. Bless. All right, take care. Bye.